Welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man. We are playing our Eldrazi and Taxes deck, and this time we are running up against blue-green Infect. So let's get our opening hand up. So this is kind of an interesting one. We've got Vile, Wasteland Strangler, and Double Thought-Knot Seer. Sadly no Temple to sort of speed these creatures out, but Turn 1 Vile is very good in this deck. Possibly one of our best starts, really, is getting Turn 1 Vile, and it can activate a lot of the things that we want to do with the deck. I still think this is potentially a mulligan in the dark, but I think I end up keeping this hand. Sketchy that may be. So I've gone mulled to 5 on the draw. Leads with Misty Rainforest, Breeding Pool into a Glistener Elf. We draw a Ghost Core, which isn't too bad. As things go, it's able to kill Inkmoth Nexus, which is obviously very relevant in this matchup. So not the best of draws, obviously would rather have had a 2-drop maybe, but it gives us something to work with. So opponent has another fetch, plays Groundswell, and it's going to be able to hit us for 5 Infect here, which is pretty painful. We draw Path to Exile, which is very good, obviously very useful. We're going to use that here now. Basically, because we don't want him to get a pump off whatever spell he has. If he has Mines of Vastwood or Blossoming Defense, you know, even if he's able to protect the Glistener Elf, at least we've got a potential pump out of his hand, and it's not going to be hitting us. So he does have Blossoming Defense here, so he does manage to protect the Glistener Elf, but at least he's one pump spell down. Fortunately, our hand isn't looking too great, and our opponent has Might of Old Corrosa as the follow-up, which is going to be able to give his creature +4/+4, and with that he's going to be able to hit us for 5 Infect and finishes off, unfortunately. So yeah, that didn't go too well. Went pretty well for our opponent, obviously. He had a mull to 5 and still managed to win on turn 3, so pretty good for our opponent. Possibly should have mulliganed down to, you know, a faster hand that actually had some earlier plays, because we still don't really have anything to play next turn. So yeah, I think kind of bad. Obviously in the dark we didn't know we were going to be playing against Infect, and now our opponent was going to be so fast, but maybe this was a mulligan anyway. Yeah, our opponent had the answer to the Path to Exile, which put us unable to beat this Glistener Elf. So let's go on to game 2. Okay, we're back with game 2. Okay, so this is our opener. We've got 2 Path to Exiles, Thalia, Tidehollow Skull, Flicker Wisp, and a Strangler. Actually, we haven't talked about sideboarding again. Sorry, let's do that, shall we? Okay, so here we are with the sideboard. So against Infect, we don't have a ton of things that we want to come in, I suppose. Fatal Push, obviously good. We want as much removal as possible. Oz of Pontiff I like as well. He's able to kill most of their creatures, and particularly if we can Vile him in, we might be able to catch an Inkmoth Nexus or something as well. So yeah, that seems like it could potentially be very good, so I think we'll be bringing that in. Rest in the Peace, I suppose it can turn off Become Immense, but hardly seems worthwhile. Sonic Silence doesn't really do anything. Caught Fireworker, no good. Relic Warder doesn't really do anything. Mirror Crusader isn't particularly exciting. I suppose it's potentially a blocker for an Infect creature, so yeah. And in terms of things we want to take out, I think Reality Smashers are obviously going to be too slow. Thought-Knot Seer might be a bit too slow. What else isn't particularly good? Arbiter is not too bad, I suppose. It kind of potentially punishes them on their fetch lands. Scholar seems good. Thalia seems very good, making their pump spells more expensive. Obviously our Path to Exiles are good. So yeah, I think bringing Fatal Push, Oz of Pontiff. I think I might have brought in 1 or 2 of the Mirroring Crusaders, just to get rid of the reality smashers basically. They're just going to be too slow in this matchup, so I think that's probably what we're looking at in terms of sideboarding. So let's get back to game 2. Okay, so back with game 2. We've already looked at our hand, haven't we? So yeah, so we've got a good hand, but it's a 1-lander. I think I end up taking the risk with this. We've got double path, so and really as soon as we draw a second land, we're doing pretty well. Lead off with Godless Shrine tapped. I'm not really sure why actually. I should have probably just played that untapped, because there's a reasonable chance our opponent plays something on a path. Noble Hierarch is not one of the cards we want to path though, so don't get punished for that decision. But yeah, we definitely should have just played that untapped. We draw into Shambling Vent, which is good. I mean, an untapped land would have been better, but fairly happy to see that we drew into a land. Otherwise, we could have been struggling. Makes a Breeding Pool, taxes with Noble Hierarch, which seems to indicate that he's struggling for Infect guys. We drop Thalia. Could have played Sculler instead, I suppose, but we're kind of aware that our opponent seems to be struggling on things to do with their hand, so. Tax with Noble, again, I'm not particularly interested. I guess he's going on a sort of Noble beatdown plan until he can find a Infect creature. Seems like our opponent kept a sort of fairly sketchy hand as well, in terms of not having any Infect creatures and just having Noble Hierarch. So we see our opponent's hand with the Tidehollow Sculler. So he's got Spell Pierce ×2. So keep that in mind with these Path to Exiles. Got Might of Old Kurosa, Distortion Strike, and Become Immense. I think I'm going to take the Become Immense. If he's really forced down the Noble Hierarch beatdown plan, then that's really the only card that we need to be particularly concerned about in terms of him dealing a lot of damage to us. So I think we just take that and leave him with the rest of his hand, which we can be fairly happy about, to be honest. Not a lot of pump in there. I mean, he's got Might and a Distortion Strike, but that's not particularly impressive. So yeah, we're not really under any pressure from our opponent, and we also know about his disruption spells in terms of the Spell Pierces, so we can play around those pretty effectively at this stage in the game. So yeah, I just take the Become Immense, and we're just going to pass here. Let's tax with the the Noble again, sorry. I'm going to block here. I suppose Thalia is sort of potentially useful, but knowing our opponent's hand, I think we just want him to use the pump. I know that he's like kind of trying to goad us into this block, but basically what I want to do here is get our opponent to use the pump spell on the Noble. And then we can follow up with a Wasteland Strangler and just kill off the Noble, so then we don't have really any risk of dying to that. And then we've got still got our paths really back to back up, so like we can be fairly happy with that. So yeah, so we get to kill off the Noble Hierarch, we return Become Immense to our opponent's graveyard, which means that the Sculler now has nothing under it, which is obviously good. And we're able to attack our opponent for 2. One plays an Opt and finds an Inkmoth Nexus, but we've got the Ghost Quarter to deal with that as well, so we're not particularly concerned. Going to attack for 5 here, put it down to 9, and we're going to play this Eldrazi Displacer, which is obviously pretty good. Potentially we can recur Wasteland Strangler or the Tidehollow Sculler with that, but I think we're just going to keep up Ghost Quarter, and yeah, our opponent concedes to that basically. Would have been dead, not next turn, 3, 6, 7, 8. So yeah, you're 1 point off dead next turn. Well, actually, we could have attacked with a Shambling Vent, I guess. So yeah, he would have just been dead next turn, I suppose, if we attacked with a Shambling Vent. So yeah, that wraps up game 2 in our favour. Okay, so now we're on to game 3. This is our opening hand. So 1 Reality Smasher, 1 Mirren Crusader, 2 Thought-Knot Seers, double Eldrazi Temple, and a Plains. So yeah, it's kind of a tricky one. It doesn't have any removal in it, which obviously is a problem, but we can't really guarantee that we're going to have removal with this deck, given that we've got, after sideboard, we've got 5 removal spells in the whole deck. And it's kind of hard to pass up on turn 2 Thought-Knot Seer and potentially turn 3 Reality Smasher. So I think I'm going to keep this. Again, I'm not entirely sure how we sideboarded. It looks like we kept at least 1 Reality Smasher in. We also brought in Mirren Crusader, so I'm not entirely sure how that sideboarding went. Maybe we cut one of our other cards rather than the Reality Smasher. But I think Reality Smasher probably generally a bit too slow, but this hand's pretty good. But leads off with Pendelhaven into Noble Hierarch, which is fine for us. I think obviously him not having a Glistener Elf or something straight off the bat is good for us. Plays an Inkmoth Nexus, so obviously got an Infect creature there now that we will need to deal with, but we've got the Ghost Quarter in hand for that, and we also drew Path to Exile, so pretty good position. And some nice draws from us as well, I suppose. So we're going to Thought-Knot Seer, get a look at our opponent's hand. So he's got Vines of Vastwood, Nature's Claim, and Become Immense. Become Immense is quite a long way off at this point. Nature's Claim doesn't really do anything because we don't have Vial and we don't have a Sculler, so neither of them do. I mean, that card doesn't really do anything. It's fairly dead. But we just want to take Vines, given that's his. He can give his creature hexproof. So that's his only real protective spell that he's got. And as I say, Become Immense is a long way off, and Nature's Claim doesn't really do anything. So we're fairly happy with the state of our opponent's hand currently. So we'll just take the Vines there. Just double check that was what we did. Yep. And I'm going to pass the turn back to our opponent. Cracks his Misty, activates Inkmoth, uses Pendelhaven on it, and he's going to be able to hit us for 3 Infect here. Which is fine. Draw a Vial, which we probably just don't want to use, given that we know our opponent's got Nature's Claim. Attack 4 with the Thought-Knot Seer. I think we're going to Thought-Knot Seer here again, and then keep up Path to Exile. As I say, we did have the Ghost Quarter in hand, so we maybe were better off actually. I think in looking back on this game, we were probably better off just playing the Ghost Quarter there rather than the Plains, and then Ghost Quartering his Inkmoth Nexus there and then, because he's only got 1 mana available with the Hierarch, so that would have been pretty good. I think that's probably what we should have done in hindsight. We take Become Immense out of our opponent's hand. What did he have? He just has Nature's Claim basically in a land, I think, in his hand. So we take the Become Immense. It's not particularly relevant again here at this moment in time, but if he does manage to fill up his graveyard, he's got that. So Inkmoth Nexus is activated. Pendelhaven, and that's Groundswell. And we're just going to path here. Our opponent doesn't have an answer to deal with that, which means we managed to pick up the win. Yeah, I think in hindsight we should have played the Ghost Quarter and just not given him an option to potentially have the protection spell that would have allowed him to win. That would have been enough there. Groundswell would have given +4/+4, and then plus the Exalted trigger. That's 7, so we would have actually been dead there. So slightly sketchy play, I suppose, for myself. We should have played the Ghost Quarter and killed off the Inkmoth Nexus rather than going for the Path to Exile. But fortunately, our opponent didn't have any other answer, and we did know that his only other card in hand was Nature's Claim. So we're fairly confident that he didn't have a lot going on. But yeah, I suppose knowing that he only had 2 cards in hand, had he just attacked, we would have just let that go through and then forced him to play the spell before using the Path to Exile. So yeah, I think we probably would have won either way. I think we're in a good position regardless. But I think the safer play would have been to use the Ghost Quarter while he didn't have any way to activate and give it Hexproof. So yeah, that works out, and we ended up winning that match. It's kind of a tricky one, I suppose. Infect, as I say, we don't have a lot of removal in the deck apart from our 4 Path to Exiles. We do have a lot of hand disruption though, which obviously is a pain for them. But Incomoth Nexus, I suppose, is a bit of a difficulty. But then we've got Ghost Quarters as well to deal with Incomoth Nexus. So yeah, we've got the right answers. It's just kind of obviously getting them in place at the right time. And again, removal is kind of sketchy. So in our deck, we're very removal light. So yeah, I don't know that we're particularly favoured, but I say we've got particularly good cards against them. Thalia is very good at making their pump spells less useful and more difficult to cast. We've got obviously Paths to Exile, and we've got Fatal Push in the sideboard, which are all very good at removing their creatures. If we are even a little bit light on removal, and then we've got Ghost Quarter, which deals with Incomoth Nexus pretty nicely, and then all the hand disruption that we've got in the deck. So yeah, we've got the right tools, but I can see potentially losing this match if you don't manage to pick up the right cards or mulligan hard enough into them. So yeah, kind of a bit 50-50, I suppose. Definitely you could shore this game up in the sideboard, I think, but it doesn't seem particularly necessary given that Infect's not overly popular at the moment. And as I say, we do have tools in the deck that can make this matchup work.